You didn't start a business to put out fires, but here you are, holding the extinguisher. Business isn't theory, it's pressure, late nights, tight margins, the thing that keeps breaking no matter how many times you fix it. When the room's on fire, the amateurs shout, the pros stay calm. That's the Fixers and Founders way, part discipline, part rebellion. We walk into broken systems, find the pulse, and make it run clean. Because calm isn't weakness. Calm is a strategy. We're operators, builders, problem solvers, born from the grind, built for the builders. Join us now as we chat with fixers and founders just like you. Let's jump in.
Because there's like 5 places you can get them here.
It was Pete's.
Panini Pete's?
Yeah, Panini. Yeah. And tonight we're going to the Grand Hotel for dinner. So.
Love the Grand Hotel. The Sunday before Christmas brunch. It's the best brunch I've ever had. They got a jazz band playing. It's unbelievable.
My specialty is accelerating improvement, the best known process in the world today to accelerate improvement. Reason it's the best known is because it integrates total quality management and behavior science. I put those two together in what I call a compound. It's not a mixture. It can't be taken back apart. It's a compound. It can't be separated once it's put together. And so that's really my thing. I'm not really into organizational development or even leadership development. I'm into performance improvement. Now, in order to do that, you have to do some of those other things. But, there are a lot of consultants that their thing is organizational development or leadership development. That's not mine. I'll do some of that, but only I'm a graph. Show me the graph,
So, yeah, Russ, in the most simplistic terms, then, what would you say that you are brought in to fix?
Well, the first thing you have to do is help people figure out what that is. You do not know. They have too many things they're trying to do at once. And I insist on one thing. When I work with organizations, they have to focus on one thing. That one thing is whatever's the most critical issue for the future of our organization. So we determine what that is. I call that a wrestling match. I took wrestling in college. Wrestling, you get locked up with something and you can't let go. But we wrestle until we get that. It could be a theater where we're working on seating. It could be in a hospital. It could be in a school. It could be in a manufacturing. It doesn't matter. Sometimes people say that won't work here, because we're different, which almost everybody says when you first start. And I ask them a question. I say, does gravity work here? If gravity work here, this will work here, if you do it.
Do you mean to tell me that people are resistant to change? No way.
Actually, I would push back on that and say, no, they're not. People love change if the consequences are right. They will drive for change when the consequences are right.
That's why I'm really excited to dig into what you're saying, Russ, because that's an area that I need development on and would love to know, how do you get them to that point? I know how to give them the tools and the systems that will yield those results and the outcome that they want. How do you get them to see that light at the end of the tunnel and get them to take the jump and get on board behind you and do their part? Welcome to Fixers and Founders, the place where vision meets velocity. I'm Tony.
I'm Forrest.
Today's guest is Russell Justice, an engineer, coach, and mentor who spent 5 decades helping leaders turn intention into action. He's worked in more than 25 countries, teaching teams from Kodak to American Greetings that leadership isn't a mystery, it's a craft. His book, This Is What Leaders Do, distills a lifetime of lessons into practical principles that help people lead with clarity, discipline, and grace. If you've ever wondered what it takes to lead well and sleep well, this one's for you. I'm Tony.
Forrest.
This is Fixers and Founders. Let's get it done.
Let's do it. Russell, great to have you here. So first question right out of the gate, how did an engineer end up writing a leadership book?
Okay, so I'm an engineer and I'm supervising a group of engineers. My wife and I went to a conference called How to Be Happy Though Married was the name of it.
All right.
And at that conference, I realized that there was science to behavior. It was about how we behave. And so I got interested in behavior science and decided I would dig into it some more. I searched to find out where the best places were to go learn about behavior science. And there were 2 places. One was an organization ran by Fran Tarkington, and the other was one ran by a guy named Aubrey Daniels. And I connected with Aubrey Daniels, started going to some of his training in schools and became interested in behavior science. So now I'm back with my engineering group. I've got a group of engineers, and they're out solving problems around the factory. And they write the reports that solve the problems. And but too often, those never got implemented. They were great solutions, but we never could get people to do it. So once I'd gotten into the behavior science side, I had all my engineers write 2 reports. Every time they did a study, they would write 1 report on how to solve the problem and a second report on how to get people to do that. There were 5 engineering groups like mine. My group had more results, as the way the company measured the results over the next few years, than all the other 4 groups put together. So the next thing you know, I'm in the office of the CEO of the company, and he wants to know what I'm doing out there. And so that was my introduction. And so I'm right at the top of the company now, working with the leadership.
That's awesome. That's a great story. We talked about it earlier. I was registered for class for 2 years for chemical engineering, but attendance, I did not quite make the attendance, so I didn't follow through either. I could have used your help back then. You write that leadership isn't supposed to feel like a high wire act. What do most leaders get wrong about simplicity?
Let's talk about the things they get wrong, and maybe even more important are the things they don't get right. In terms of the things they get wrong, some of those examples for me would be, number one, too many of them are goal-oriented but not action-oriented. They want to set goals, but they don't want to create the action behind it. Dr. Deming, the father of quality, used to talk about that. He said that it was a burlesque to have, he called them targets versus actions, that you were just putting on a show. And too many of our managers have been reinforced for just being good goal setters, but they don't do the back end, which is where a lot of the work is. Another mistake I would say that they make is not sticking to what they've chosen. Constancy of purpose. I say don't put CEOs on an airplane and let them go somewhere, because if you do, they'll take the magazine that's in the seat back in front of them, take it out and start reading that magazine. And when they come back, they want to do what's in the magazine. They've been successful at that as CEOs. So one of the biggest problems is annual goals. We've got something we're working on. We've already determined it's important to the company, and we're making progress maybe, and it's time the calendar flips over. And for some reason, because it's a new year, we come up with new things to work on. So those are some of the mistakes, I would think. Now, on the other side of the things they don't do, which is I'm working with the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and he said, my leadership style is I tell people what to do and leave them alone. Well, there's a problem with that. It's called entropy. Second law of thermodynamics. If you leave something alone, it'll get worse over time, no matter what it is. It'll deteriorate over time. And that's what happens with people. I say leaders have, when they ask somebody to do something, you've got 2 obligations. The first obligation is to observe whether they do it or not. And the second observation is to recognize it once they have done it. And those are actually the 2 things that come after a behavior. Leaders spend most of their time telling people what to do, trying to get people to do something, trying to motivate people to do something. The reason people actually do things is based on what happens to them after they do it. That's the big mistake, focusing on before people behave versus after they behave.
That's a good word.
Yeah, I love all that. Can I chime in for a minute? So you talked about goals, and goal setters. So I've had my mantra, often has been just, I believe in systems over goals, because systems are where goals go to get done. And then you mentioned something about entropy. What happens when you leave some things alone reminds me of my real estate days. As soon as a house would become vacant and start to get no attention, it would just wither away. And then finally, you talked about, people are motivated to do things because of the outcome, recognizing when they achieve those outcomes. Well, I mean, to me, some of that is a bit like common sense. So we have a young daughter, and before knowing any structure to that or anything, I started doing this little thing here. You see this? This is her sticker page.
Yep.
Every time she's caught doing right, she gets a sticker. Those stickers each represent $1. So every time she gets 10, she gets herself a nice, treat up to $10, right? And she's got hundreds of dollars worth of these stickers, and she's only ever lost one. and it's got a big red X on it. And it said flying high. It said, babe, you flew too high. Like we had to take one away. Now, even the thought of taking one away, it's like, oh, she's got hundreds and never had another one taken away. That first one got taken away in the first few days. And it's been a couple of years now, at least since we've been doing that. And it works awesome.
That's a key. Those stickers are exactly what this is all about, accelerating. And those stickers are for the executives, for the middle managers, for the front line. It's everybody spoken in their language, whatever the way they do business with their language is what makes the difference. On goals, I would say I make fun of goals. I mean, people will set a goal to improve something 5% or 10% or whatever. So first of all, I'd say, if you want to improve something 5%, you don't want to talk to me, because I want to improve it a whole lot more than that. Okay. But also, those are ridiculous. People say, well, where did that come from? I like to use what I call natural goals. Natural goals are best efforts. What's the best we've ever done? And let's do better than that. And celebrate, but just like a Guinness Book of Records or anything like that, best efforts. And the other is longest strings. How long can you do it? Once you get perfect, we've had where they got their damage down to zero. Now what are you going to do? How many weeks in a row can you be at zero? And we'll rally around longest strings and best efforts. They will not rally around 5%.
Yeah, I like that, the best evers and the longest string, because, you think about like job sites and where it's how many days have you not had an accident and what is that longest string? So that's good. I just finished a quarterly session with a client setting goals. So now I feel less accomplished after talking to you today. So I appreciate that.
I'm going to take a minute and talk about those longest strings and safety. Anytime you mention a subject, an old man's got a story. Okay. We're working in Mexico to build a new $1 billion facility. And when we first started working there, we worked with the government and the contractors, and they said, we hope not too many people die on this project. And we were like aghast. People do not die on our construction projects. So anyway, we started the project and we used this continuous improvement approach.
Yeah.
We ended up building that entire facility over like a 2.5 year privilege. One person lost one day during the entire 2.5 years.
And nobody died.
Nobody died. We met with the Mexican government after that, and they said, we will never accept in Mexico what we've accepted in the past as the practices for safety.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a great story. Shifting gears a little bit, in your view, what's the real difference between compliance and commitment when you're inside of a team?
The difference is in the type of reinforcement. There's two ways to increase behavior. One is positive reinforcement. That's where somebody gets something they want. Another way to increase behavior is negative reinforcement. That's avoiding something you don't want. So that's the difference in commitment and compliance also. Commitment is getting what you want. Compliance is avoiding something you don't want. With negative reinforcement and compliance, you do just enough to avoid whatever that threat was that's out there. And you can see that I can go in and look at a graph in an organization and tell you which of those they're using to manage. The shape of the curve is different depending on if you've got a positive reinforcement environment or a negative reinforcement environment. For example, if you said, we've got a new equipment out here that we need everybody to learn how to use this piece of equipment. And so by the end of the year, in order to stay working here, to be employed here, you've got to learn this piece of equipment by the end of the year and how to run this. You got to demonstrate that you can do that. How many people do you think are going to demonstrate that in January?
None.
No. January 0, February 0, March 0. November, the graph. That's negative reinforcement. They're doing what they have to do to avoid getting fired.
Yeah.
Now, what if you said, once everybody in the organization has completed this, knows this new procedure and has demonstrated they know how to do it, then we're going to, in our case, I'm near in Tennessee, we're going to rent Dollywood for a day for all of our families can go to Dollywood for a day. You better not promise that unless you know how to get the tickets for Dollywood, because it's going to go up immediately. That's positive. They're doing it because they want to.
Yeah.
That's
I like that.
So, Russell, when it comes to that, though, clearly there still needs to be some accountability. How does accountability factor in to that structure?
All the systems I build are built around teams. I don't ever work trying to change an individual's behavior. It's always, as a team, we're trying to improve something and get better. I found that once we get that system built, where it is how we're measuring is clear, how we're keeping scores clear, and people know the benefit, why we're doing this, why it's important. If there are people on the team that are not helping us, if we're not performing well because of them, one of two things will happen. They'll either get so much pressure on them from you think about a football team. If there's a lineman, offensive lineman is not blocking, man, I mean, he's going to be in trouble with the rest of the team, right? They will either be so much pressure that they will begin to perform well or they will leave, one of the two. You don't have to deal with that problem. The team will deal with it.
So, Russell, you've called feedback the breakfast of champions. What does good feedback actually look like in practice?
Okay. Couple of points about feedback. The challenges with feedback are two. First of all, you've got to figure out what it is you're going to feedback. In other words, what's on the y-axis is the way I put it. What's that one thing that's most critical to this team or this group or wherever, for this group of people we're working with? One manager told me the most important thing I ever taught them was to ask the question, what's on the y-axis? For example, in executive teams, I've learned executives like to do two things. They like to do training programs and they like to do reorganizations, and they went somewhere and saw this training program and it was great. Or, anytime a leader would come in a leadership team, executive team, and come up with one of those, a training program or a new organization, I'd say, okay, I've got three questions for you. I'm going to go up to the board. I'm going to draw an XY axis like a graph. And I want to know, first of all, what's the title of this graph? What is it that needs to be improved? And that's why we're going to do this training, or that's why we're going to have a reorganization. And the second thing I want to know is not only the title, but how we're going to measure it. How we're going to know if this training worked to improve whatever this subject was up here. And the third thing I want to know is down at the bottom of this graph, I want to write the name of the sponsor. Who wants to sponsor this project? And I've had executives that would say to me, Justice, we hate it when you say that. Just forget the whole thing. Because they're trying to do something. They're measured, they're not really after the right thing. So you've got to measure the right thing. Second thing is you've got to make that visible so that everybody can see it. The scoreboard is what I call it. Feedback has to be timely enough and specific enough to allow performance to change before the outcome, while it still is, in other words, it's during the game. Think about sports. If we're watching baseball and a run scores, what happens? The scoreboard changes immediately before the next ball is even pitched. That's what we've got to have. And now some people think that reports from accounting are feedback. Accounting does not put out feedback. It's like reading about the game in the newspaper the next day. The game is over. You can't do anything about it. You've got to have real-time feedback. For example, we've got an organization I work with that had 800 mechanics worked here and thousands of pieces of equipment. And we're trying to keep those pieces of equipment running. And we identified the top 20, the most 20 critical pieces of equipment. And we built a 4x8 sheet of plywood with a Hot Wheels track on it. And the pits, if one of those 20 machines went down, we went and moved it into the pits. And the job of the maintenance group is to do two things: get it out as fast as they can and get it out so it doesn't have to come back again. But it was visible. And it was immediately when it happened. When the machine went down, you went and moved the car into the pits. That action had to take place.
Yeah,
cool.
That's very creative. So, Russell, you've spent years teaching leaders to move from frantic to serene. What's the first habit that helps them to start that journey?
Well, first of all, I believe that calm is contagious. Chaos is also contagious, of course. So sereneness can be passed on to other people. Probably the thing that best helps there is to get focused, is to not try to do everything, not try to be a jack of all trades, but focus on that vital thing. Are you familiar with essentialism? Essentialism says we're not trying to do more things, we're trying to do the right things. For example, the word priority has been in the English language for several hundred years, priority. But for the first 200 years that it was in the English language, there's no record of the word priority ever being used with an S on the end of it. priority. For 200 years, they never put an S on it.
That's
Today,
profound.
you have people that would say, here's our 10 priorities. When you've got 10 priorities, you have no priorities.
Yeah, good
So
point.
for leaders to simplify their life, they've got to reduce those number of things they're doing, get it down to the vital few. And then you have to do some of the things in the book, which I talk about just focusing is the first thing there. But then you've got to link everybody in the company into that. Everybody in the organization has to be part of what we're trying to do. We're working on sales revenue growth around the globe, 25,000 people. And so we've called all of the lieutenants in from around the world, like the top 30 people. And at the top of a wall, we had sales revenue growth. And each person had to come in from around the world and put up a graph of what they were going to do in their organization to drive sales revenue growth. And then we'll put a ribbon between each one of those graphs and the sales revenue graph to see. Mr. Reed, Toy Reed, who was the head of the company, said at the end of that day, he said, I used to go to corporate and tell them what our goals are going to be next year. And I would be flying home on a plane and thinking, you must have been out of your mind when you told them you were going to do that. He said, not tonight. He said, I'm going to sleep like a baby tonight. You can see right here on this wall exactly how we're going to accomplish what we set out.
That's awesome.
So, Russell, after your decades of work, what principle still surprises you with its truth?
I publish at the end of every year my gem of the year, the single most important thing I learned at the end of the year. I've done that now for over 25 years. But I also published the gem of the decade. So the gem of the decade in the 1970s for me, I graduated from college a couple of times in the 70s, started to work in the 70s. But the gem of the decade for me in the 1970s was behavior is a function of consequences. Do what they do because of what happens to them when they do it. That changed my whole life. It changed the way I parented my children. It changed me as a husband. It changed my work. It changed everything. So that one principle is just foundational in my life. Some of the others I would say is similar to that. The gem of the decade, the next decade, was called Hoshin Kanri. It's a concept from Japan that has two principles, focus and alignment. But those are the two keys, they would say, to success. So that would be another one for me. More recently, it would probably be essentialism. And what we talk about, less is more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Less is more.
I
is
find
big.
that to be particularly true with technology, and maybe you can second that for us. Less is more. The more options we have, the less we necessarily need to use.
Absolutely. I was my session yesterday with a client. I was talking about less is more. I use that exact statement multiple times. Less team members is more on a leadership team. Less goals is more. So, yeah. All right. Here's some wild card questions for you. Who's someone who quietly shaped you lead? Someone who might not have even known it?
I would have to go back really to my coaches of my sports teams when I was a boy as a kid.
Yeah.
And watching how they coached the teams. That's a form of leadership, of course. And watching them was critical to me. And then later on, I would say in college, some of my professors, the way they led the class was a great influence on me. Once I got into organizations and business, the people that shaped me the most, I mentioned already Toy Reed. I can name on my 5 fingers the 5 greatest leaders I've ever worked with. He would be one. I just watched how he did business. And I'll give you an example. I can't really talk about any subject without an example, as you can tell. We went to corporate headquarters once, and we had these things when we were doing great. And they said corporate had an initiative to cut costs by 5%. And so every organization got to cut costs 5%. So we're flying back on the company plane. And I asked him, I said, Mr. Reed, I said, well, what are you going to do about that 5%? I said, that's going to throw a monkey wrench in what we're trying to do. Everybody's not going to be happy about this. He said, I don't know what you're going to do. He said, I'm not going to ever mention what happened up here. You do, you're fired. He said, my job is to shield my organization from that type of nonsense.
Yeah.
He said, most leaders, when something comes to them, they just turn around and pass it down to the people below them. He said, my job is to stop that stuff, that nonsense from happening. So Toy, I'll maybe kind of summarize that, I would say one of my bylines is, I'm a turtle on a fence post. What that means is, if you've ever seen a turtle sitting on top of a fence post, you know he did not get up there by himself.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the benefit of leaders, coaches, teachers in my life that I've been able to do things. Growing up in the cotton mill village, I never could have dreamed of doing this.
I know. That's cool.
So, Russell, what would be one of those ordinary, otherwise small moments that remind you why you still love and do this work?
It could be. So the book's coming up, and a friend of mine who's retired from American Greetings out in Arkansas, retired, and now he's the mayor of a town. Well, he's taken the book and he's meeting with all of his town leaders, the police department, the garbage collection people, road maintenance. He's meeting with all those folks, and he's going through the book one chapter at a time, and they're going to apply those accelerating continuous improvement process to each one of those organizations. Well, that's really satisfying to see him do something like that. Others on a smaller scale, I guess, would be, my wife likes to talk about this. Sometimes we'll be in a coffee shop or at the airport in the waiting room or somewhere like that, and somebody will come up to me and pull out of their pocket a gem, what I call a shining gem. It's these gems I collect each year and publish. And they'll say, here's my gem from 5 years ago or 10 years ago when I was in your class. And you said this, and it made a difference in my life.
That's awesome.
Very cool. Hey, Russell, it's been such a pleasure having you here. You're loaded with gems. I can't wait to implement some of them, and some of them I definitely, align with, and it's been such a pleasure. Before we get off into the weekend here, Russell, where can others go and find out more about you? Where can they order your book? Where can they get in touch with you and some of these gems?
You can get the book. Probably the easiest way is on Amazon. Order the book. This is what leaders do, and the emphasis is on do. That's what I want to emphasize. And you could reach me at russelljustice@earthlink.net is my email.
Well, this was Russell Justice reminding us some of the gems of leadership. And, one of the big takeaways for me was, and I'd never heard this before, priority never had an S on it until recently. And that sticks with me, and less is more definitely sticks with me. But if you lead, manage, or mentor anyone or wind this one, there's a lot of gold parts in this one. I'm Forrest.
I'm Tony.
And this is Fixers and Founders.
Oh, my darlings, look at you. Still here with me till the end. That's how I know you're one of us. The fixers, the founders, the ones who build in the chaos and still manage to laugh through it. Drop a comment, share your sparks, and connect with each other. This is where the net weaving begins. Like, share, and subscribe to keep the fire blowing. Until next time.